Hello, today I'd like to talk to you about pluralism. Now, pluralism is actually a description in political science of the effects of private and public interests upon public policy, interest groups, if you might. This is actually the dominant theory of political science and has been for at least 50 years. Now, let me start and talk about what pluralism is. Pluralism means decision making by other than simple majority decisions. In a very honest fashion, pluralism is normally good. If you go out with your family and one member just really doesn't want to eat somewhere, even though everybody else would prefer to go there, you tend not to go there. The same with your friends or other types of things. We make adjustments to other people based upon the intensity of their feelings, not necessarily just by the majority. Pluralism within society makes a good deal of sense too. It means that you accommodate those who are not majorities, whether it be minorities in terms of ethnicity or religions, or in terms of ethnic groups. Our economic system is also very pluralistic in a very positive sense. Few of you probably golf. I do. I don't golf all the time, but I enjoy golfing. But that makes me a minority. But the economic system responds to me as a minority because it's pluralistic. It adjusts and allows for people who want to do something to be able to do it, to obtain objects and goods or services that most people don't want. But that doesn't mean that those who do want it should be excluded from this. Now, the problem is that this hasn't always been positive within the political system. Now, originally, it was thought to be, most certainly back in the early 1900s, a scholar named Bentley, in the process of government, argued that this is the best way of representing a variety of interests because it allows for accounting for intensity of interest, not just numbers. But by the 1950s, we were challenging that. David Truman turned the words around a little bit in his book. He called it the governmental process. But others like E. Snyder talked also about the credible bias the system has picked up toward those who have income and wealth. And by 1963, 64, Theodore Lewis' book had come out, The End of Liberalism. This is not left-right type thing, but we're talking about liberal democracy. And he had argued that pluralism had gone so far that majority decision-making in Congress was no longer viable. And he argued that we needed to change it. When he wrote a second edition of the book in 1978, he argued that we had left the first Republic of America where citizens basically were the participants and entered a new republic in which corporations were the participants. I would argue that the Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, in 2008, was a very strong validation of Lowy's opinion, but I am not necessarily as extreme as he is on this particular position. Now, the difficulty, of course, is that you cannot get rid of interest groups. They're protected by the First Amendment. We have the right to assemble. We have the right for free press, free speech, and the right to address and petition our government for redress of grievance. That's a justification and a political constitutional protection for interest groups. But the problem is that all interest groups aren't equal. Those with money, those who can pay what we call selective incentives, things like dividends, salaries, well, they have a much, much greater opportunity to make sure that those who are participating actually do participate. They have already organized for another reason. They usually have profits, which they can use to access political figures, possibly help them in campaigns. Those that aren't organized as such Clubs like the Sierra Club, for example, doesn't pay people salaries. In fact, you have to pay to join the Sierra Club. The same exists for most non-economic profit-seeking organizations. They actually have costs to organize and provide it. Now, some like AARP, that's the American Association of Retired Persons, tries to provide some incentives by helping you with taxes or possibly by group purchasing, but it's very, very hard to match the effects of the large economic interests within our country. What makes it even worse is, of course, these interests are very, very focused. And when we talk about in Congress, congressional committees give them a point of focus that makes it easy for them to have undue influence. Think in terms of a particular issue. Now, this issue may not affect you very much. It may cost you a little bit over the year, such as possibly changing a regulation so slightly change the quality of a product or something like this, or possibly the safety of a product. But it's not going to be enough that, for maybe a few dollars a year, you're going to go to Sacramento or to Washington, D.C. to advocate against making changes that a particular corporation or group of corporations might want. But while it may only cost you $10, $15 a year, when you look at that in terms of 330 million Americans, that means you're talking about billions of dollars. They will be there. Now, if this is one decision or two decisions, well, it might not hurt you too much. But what we're potentially talking about here are hundreds of decisions made both at the bureaucratic level and at the congressional level, and most certainly some of the deregulation that we've seen over the last 3 years at the presidential level, which, if you magnify by 40 to 50 years, will have a huge impact economically on you. One decision may not be enough to get you motivated, but the sum total of them may be what has created much of our income inequality in this country and a deterioration of life over what it could be. Interest groups are important. They're constitutionally protected. However, we actually need to do something to control their influence so that the rest of us can actually still be making decisions in the best interest of the country as a whole. Thank you very much. I hope this gives you something to think about and progress. Vote, that's one way of dealing with the effect of interest groups. Let your politicians know that you're still paying attention. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.